morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News. It looks like Fantastic Four Babies has found its Doctor Doom, and it's none other than Toby Kebbell. Who? Exactly. This was kind of a non-headline that made the rounds yesterday, and apparently Kebbell is going to be big. You know, that's what Fox, kind of the spin they've put on this story. They're like, he's in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. You all love that, fanboys. And he's also in the upcoming Warcraft film. Get excited! It's hard to get excited about this Fantastic Four reboot. And I think that Toby Kebbell isn't like Brenton Thwaites, another young actor who has a ton of projects coming up. Maleficent, Oculus, The Giver. But the reason I think it's a little you can buy into that hype a little bit more is because Thwaites is so big in his native Australia. Kebbell is one of those circumstances where Hollywood's like, trust us, he's great in the room. That's a Hollywood terminology for when you come in for your meeting or your audition for casting. They're like, he's great in a room. But the question is Toby Kebbell great on a screen? As I said, he hasn't really made an impression so far. No one's like, oh yeah, I love that guy, he's finally getting his recognition. So I think this is a very risky casting choice. I think that it speaks more to what's going on around his casting, both in terms of Josh Trank, who else was considered for the role, and Fox at large. So let's start off with Fox at large. Yesterday, one of you asked me what my thoughts on a story that was unfortunately clearly an April Fool's joke. And I felt bad because this BTT viewer was so excited about this news and hoped against hope that it was true. And that's that someone, for an April Fool's joke, another website ran the story that Fox had sold the rights back to Marvel for Fantastic Four and X-Men for $1.8 billion. I think they're worth probably more than that. I mean, remember, Marvel itself was worth $4 billion, and look at all the movies that Fox is able to churn out of those two properties. And I guess it's not totally out of the realm of possibilities, considering that Fox did give up on Daredevil. They were like, we broke it, you fix it, Marvel. And I think there is some chance that Fantastic Four, after this reboot, could go back to Marvel. They could give it back, because it's such a mess. The first one was such a mess, the first two films, even though they got two out of it. And I think this one has been written off by everybody before they've even filmed a single frame. And that is so unfortunate. So I think that they're never giving up X-Men. Never. That will never happen. I think you'll never pry that from Fox's cold, dead hands even, because they're as I've said before, Fox is successful enough. They get enough right with the X-Men. And Bryan Singer, as you can see, has really committed for the long haul at this point because he has nothing else to do. So X-Men will never leave Fox. Fantastic Four, maybe. Now, as I said, everybody's written this film off industry-wise and audience-wise. The media is still trying to, they're still interested in it, and I think Michael B. Jordan, he's another casualty of this project. I mean, many of you, when Bleeding Cool reported that they were trying to get rid of Josh Trank and potentially recast, Fox vehemently denied that rumor, but Bleeding Cool, you should know, stood by it and said, I think quite cleverly, that if Fox didn't want that rumor out there, they should stop asking other people to direct their Fantastic Four movie. Apparently, they were trying to go around Josh Trank's back, ask other directors, but nobody wanted it, which is another bad sign, that everyone was like, no thanks. I mean, I hope that the reason everybody turned it down is because they didn't want to do that to Josh Trank, but I think more than likely they were like, that looks horrible, I've seen your script, don't insult me, Fox, get it away from me. So Josh Trank, huge talent coming off of Chronicle. He couldn't agree with the studio over Chronicle 2. They're moving on without him, or without his major involvement, at least, on a sequel that was recently announced this week as well. And now he's stuck with this film that he's got to keep doing. And I hope at least he goes for broke visually. I hope artistically. I hope everyone's like, you know what, this casting and script is horrible, but what Josh Trank contributed was quite good. Let's try him again. It just shows how crucial it is to navigate Hollywood at every level. I think sure when he first signed on for Fantastic Four, maybe Mark Miller drove up and was like, gave him a great, Mark Miller's great at the sell, but buyer beware when it comes to Mark Miller. Even if it's just a comic book. Some of his comic books are great, some are just truly awful and just showboating. And so I think that Josh Trank really got sold a bill of goods here, and I wish that he had a different comic book property that he had been attached to. But Fantastic Four, not good. All right, so we've talked about poor Michael B. Jordan and Josh Trank, who are riding this thing down like in Dr. Strangelove on that atom bomb. I hope they have a good ride down at least. And then also Fox, just how big of a mess can they make, and at what point will they let this property go as well and just focus on the X-Men films. I hope they don't tie the X-Men into this disaster. The X-Men will be like, remember when we went into that pocket universe with the sucky Fantastic Four? I'd like to forget that adventure. We all would. All right, so the other thing was who else they considered. Now, one name I thought was crazy was Domhnall Gleeson from About Time. That redheaded guy. He was quite charming in About Time, but the fact that he could play Doctor Doom really makes me wonder either there are hidden depths to his talent, or how is this role written that he could be even considered for it? I also think it's interesting he's even up for this type of summer blockbuster comic book movie, and it makes me wonder where we might see him, where he'll end up if he's trying to make these kind of rounds. He seems like a straight indie romantic comedy guy to me. He's in that upcoming Trank movie with Michael Fassbender, and he's very distinct. He's not like a chameleon where you're like, that was Domhnall Gleeson, get out of here. You're like, oh, hey, look, it's Domhnall Gleeson. He looks the same, he talks the same. Even when he grows his hair out, he's essentially the same. Like, that's the extent of his ability to blend with a movie. But I just think that that's a ridiculous choice. But I really like him as an actor, so I hope he gets something good. A comedic element. I see him more in the Robert Downey Jr., Chris Pratt, Paul Rudd vein than a villain like Dr. Doom. The other person, though, that I can't believe he didn't get this gig was Jack Houston from Boardwalk Empire. He is so amazing, and he's playing someone with a mask there. How does he not get Dr. Doom? He's probably just like, I give up. I mean, he also auditioned for Guardians of the Galaxy for the Star-Lord role, the Chris Pratt one, and he's been mentioned for a number of projects. I think he's extremely talented. He's a Houston, related to Angelica Houston, John Huston's family, so incredibly talented, and Hollywood royalty, that it's just really surprising this guy can't get anything. And maybe he shouldn't have left Boardwalk Empire. I mean, there's only one season of Boardwalk Empire left, but so to have him not on it is quite tragic. I loved his character, and I loved what he did with it. And I think he would have made a great Dr. Doom. So Toby Kebbell has a lot to prove, and also he has to swim against the current of a crap project, as do all these actors. Michael B. Jordan, Miles Teller. Although I have to say, I don't think anybody's particularly worried about Miles Teller. I think while he was impressive with his acting in Spectacular Now, I don't think he's quite sympathetic. I think I've mentioned this before at San Diego Comic-Con for the Divergent press. He was not a team player. He was not a good. He was not very nice to his fellow castmates. He really dominated all the press conferences. And someone could say, "Oh, well, isn't that his job to get all the attention?" But he would intercut other people. He would talk over them. He would take other people's questions, and I felt it was really inappropriate. So. Whatever, Miles Teller. Karma. Welcome to Karma. You got cast in Fantastic Four as Reed Richards. Kate Mara, I think TV, she's on the Netflix show, obviously. She's in Transcendence, House of Cards on Netflix. Again, I don't think anybody's particularly interested in that. And, Jamie Bell as the Thing, he's also on this new AMC show, Turn, about spies during the American Revolution. I watched the trailer for it because I like American history. I like AMC. But the trailer looked pretty, like a high school, student film production. I was pretty disappointed. So, again, Michael B. Jordan and Josh Trank, I wish you could hit eject because this thing is horrible. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Another comic book news story that came out was that Kevin Feige was doing the rounds, promoting his whole universe of movies, and he said that he mentioned that for the Avengers Age of Ultron, that would really focus strongly on the Hulk and Hawkeye because they don't have their own franchises, they don't have their own movies. And basically he started out his quote by saying, well, we've already seen Iron Man's adventures. If I were Robert Downey Jr., I'd be like, what? I am the center of this universe. I just did a huge power play in terms of my contract. No one can get enough Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Or maybe Robert Downey Jr. is so busy counting his money, he's like, say whatever you want, Feige. I could care less. I got mine. I really do think that the Hulk is a fantastic commodity for Marvel Studios. I've been disappointed they haven't done more to explore that. I think he needs his own movie. I think what Joss Whedon has introduced, elements like I'm always angry, and kind of like a playfulness to Bruce Banner that wasn't there before. He's always been the victim. But I just loved his introduction when Black Widow went to get him and he, did a fake out about getting angry. I thought that was just so great. And that persona has been carried over into the comics to some degree. Not as effectively. It's almost like they've tried to duplicate Robert Downey Jr.'s success in the role of Iron Man in the comics, and I don't think that's quite worked out either. But Mark Ruffalo, this is just a fantastic role for him, and I think there needs to be a film to explore for him. There were some rumors that they would do the Planet Hulk storyline. I think that could be very interesting, and it would be a good excuse why no other character showed up during that movie, because he was on a faraway planet abandoned. That's a very good storyline overall, by the way, Planet Hulk and World War Hulk. One of the few times I actually read Hulk comics. comics. I'm not a big Hulk fan, but it has its fan base. And I'm always interested that people really like the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde aspect. And so I think that speaks to the sophistication of the story and the core idea, and that readers at this point pick up on it. And so I would love to have Mark Ruffalo have the chance to play with that. But they're saying he's going to get some spotlight time here. Also, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, he's been quite vocal about not having enough to do in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I guess they benched him for a while, and now they're like, okay, you can come back in and give him more to do. And then also there's a rumor that there'll be a lot of a Black Widow storyline, that you'll be delving into her past. I would think that would come up in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. We'll see. I'm seeing the movie tomorrow night. But I think that it's, with all these characters, I think the Avengers movies aren't where you go into huge character development. This is when you have a team problem the team has to deal with. You know who should be developed in this movie? Ultron. I think that's a big thing to be investigated. And also, the bigger picture of artificial intelligence, and did Tony Stark go too far? And obviously the Vision's going to come into play with Paul Bettany in the role, which obviously is going to, I guess, be Jarvis 2.0. How funny if you had to go back to being Robert Downey Jr.'s butler after the adventure. They were like, all right, Jarvis, back to your role. So I just think that it's nice that they're trying to focus on these characters, but I think it's a poor substitute for giving the Hulk his own movie. I don't think Hawkeye can necessarily carry his own film. I wish that he was included in this Captain America, Winter Soldier show, because so much S.H.I.E.L.D. operatives are in here already. Why isn't he there? He is a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative right alongside Black Widow. Some people have said, why not make a Black Widow Hawkeye movie? I think that could be very good. And the Hawkeye comic book is quite good, but it's very small. It's very small in scale, which is why it works. It kind of contrasts Clint Barton's superhero life with his real life, which is like an ordinary guy. So that's like an HBO show. I mean, maybe he'll go over to Netflix, but Jeremy Renner's like, don't you dare send me to the small screen. Unless it turns out great. Then he'll be like, I'd love to go over there. So anyway, I'm wondering what you guys think. Is this enough? Are you satisfied with Marvel Studios focusing on the Hulk and the Avengers 2? Do you worry about that at all? There's not too much to worry about with the Avengers 2, because I feel that Joss Whedon is so good at this. I'm very excited for it. And based on what they were doing with Captain America, the vibe on that, Marvel is on a roll. But I'm just curious to how you feel about Marvel. Basically, also what this says is they're not making a Hulk movie anytime soon, a Hulk standalone film, which as I said, I think it's a big mistake. I think that's a movie people want to see. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story is a number of you asked me what I thought of the news that it was announced that the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them Harry Potter spin-off, which is like almost a prequel of sorts, but not quite. They're saying it just takes place in the same universe because it takes place so long before the Harry Potter films that you really can't tie them in. I mean, wizards, I believe, live for a very long time, right? So you might have some characters pop up as like Easter eggs, but in general, this is a whole new story with a whole new hero, Newt Scamander. And I think making this a trilogy is a good idea, because then it just doesn't seem like just a novelty or a one-off. I think it's a signal at this point. I think this is what a trilogy does, is it signals the audience they need to take this seriously. This is going to be a time commitment, both from the people making it and now from you watching it. And they're going to have good character development, and this is a world you're going to be allowed to disappear into. They're going to give themselves the time to explore it properly. I'm also just excited it's going to take place in old-time New York. As a New Yorker, a native New Yorker, I think that's a very exciting idea. And I think I'm excited to see wizardry applied more to the real world than just, to Hogwarts and, sans Muggles territory. I mean, they would occasionally go into the real world in the Harry Potter films, but very rarely. I would be very interested to see someone go on an adventure in the real world, the Muggle world, and the like. I'm not familiar with the story, but I think it could be a really exciting story. Also, the idea that this is an older character. Instead of focusing on a group of children, you're going to be focusing on adults, which I think is also great. I think it just gives a fresh energy, and you can see how well The Hobbit's done after the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I mean, the first one was very shaky and unexpected journey, and I think a lot of us were worried. But I think the Desolation of Smaug locked this into place as a fantastic trilogy, and everyone's very excited for here. I think There and Again, Here and Back Again. I forget the title off the top of my head. They're not doing enough to promote that third film, by the way. It doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. I'm very surprised about that. But anyway, I think this is a great idea, but it's so slow moving. I wouldn't expect this to come anytime soon. As you can see, this was the third story of the day, meaning that it's not really trending very much on the internet. It's not a big attention grabber, and so Warner Brothers has some work to do to keep people invested in this franchise. And they're doing so. They're expanding their wizarding theme parks, Wizarding World of Harry Potter. They have a big one opening in Orlando this summer. And they have, of course, the studio tour out in London at the studio Leavesden that they purchased. So they're doing what they can to keep this afloat. J.K. Rowling has been downright effusive in her praise for Kevin Sujihara, saying he made this happen, and a trilogy. She'll be writing these scripts, so this could potentially even surpass Harry Potter as something that maybe can stand alone. I guess that's maybe, if I had a wish list for this, I would say the Harry Potter films, I so often felt, oh man, if I read the books, I bet this movie would be even better. And people would often say that. They'd be like, if you read the books, you really would be enjoying this. But here is the case, it's a very small, short book, very thin book, and to make a trilogy out of it, it's going to be something that develops on screen, where they have the time to have the characters have their development and big events happen to them, all that we can see it on screen. Not like, oh, if you read the book, you totally understand why Harry did that. And I'm like, well, I didn't read the book, and as I often always say, I should make this into a bumper sticker: movies shouldn't have homework. All right, so on to the viewer question. This is from Max Sarvello. You're up, Max. Max has been so nice. He has asked this question so many times. I've kind of felt that I didn't really know if the answer was something that a lot of people would be interested in, but Max has been so consistent and really very nice about it that I was like, today, Max, I'm going to answer your question. So Max, thank you also for your patience and being nice about it. You never turned mean, so that should be rewarded. All right, so Max Sarvello says, question: Hi, Grace. Long-time viewer, and I ask a lot of questions. I just saw the trailer for The Normal Heart, the HBO movie about AIDS. Speaking of Mark Ruffalo, he's in that, along with a number of TV and film actors, Julia Roberts, for instance. And it looks better than some of the Best Picture nominees this year. Even Behind the Candelabra and True Detective are better, I think he's saying, than some of the movies that were up for Best Picture. Do you think we should try and put them into the same category at the Golden Globes per se to see what exactly is better crafted and produced? All right, so short answer, no, I do not. I do not think that TV and film should compete at the same level. They are right now to some degree, but that is a problem that movies have to face, which I mentioned in my review of Cesar Chavez. Movies need to understand that TV has closed the gap considerably, and if movies want to stay ahead of the game and differentiate themselves from television, they need to do a better job. A lot of filmmakers haven't realized that yet. A lot of studios haven't realized that yet. But I think that to combine these into categories would only further blur that line, and nobody would win with that. Now, True Detective can't compete because it's so long. I mean, it's like it's an 8-hour movie, essentially. So that's unfair. They have a length of time, like I was just talking about with a trilogy. And I mean, unless True Detective was going to go up against a trilogy of films, you could have that kind of a category, but I think that would be, not work. But True Detective just has more time to do character development, to do more in-depth work. Also, it's a different game. When you write episodes, you have less time, obviously, in the script. Each episode, well, on HBO is about 50 minutes. Then also, you have to have hooks to get people to come back and watch the next episode. It's a different format. It has to do different things. So I think True Detective is a miniseries and should compete with other miniseries. Is the quality as good as a movie? Undoubtedly. And some people argue that shows like True Detective and Game of Thrones are better than movies. And they're better than a lot of movies. That's true. But it just speaks to the quality of television. And a lot of people have said the reason that's happening is because TV has become a writer's medium, where nobody cares about the screenplay on film these days, which is quite unfortunate. When you go to television, it's often the writers that are the executive producers of the show or the showrunner. You see that with Game of Thrones. True Detective, the writer is the executive producer as well, and they're able to make sure that their original vision makes it to the screen instead of being hacked to death and played around with by egos on a movie set, from the director to the actor to just a development executive who goes, I need to justify why I have an office and I am paid. So back to your other question about the TV movies. Behind the Candelabra was released as a movie overseas in theaters, and The Normal Heart, which, I don't know if that's going to be released in theaters overseas, but, those are movies. They do have to deal with the 2-hour length and, not having repeating episodes, and they have the same parameters that a film does, with the exception, I guess, of budget. So that's a big aspect there, and so that's where movies continue to also differentiate themselves. Behind the Candelabra played like an indie film to some degree. To some degree, I think Behind the Candelabra was very good, mostly for the acting that was done by Michael Douglas and Matt Damon. They did a phenomenal job bringing those characters to life and showing the dynamic between Liberace and this lover of his. They had a very, very tumultuous affair. However, I did feel that it played a little bit like a TV movie, and that it didn't pick a perspective. It tried to tell both guys' stories, and I just don't think that's effective. And The Normal Heart to me looks very good, but at the same time, and I have to say, Dallas Buyers Club, I will admit, played a little like a TV movie. I think a number of people thought that Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto's performances, just like Behind the Candelabra, were the main attraction with that film. And the film itself had problems. But you're seeing how I'm saying, oh, this movie seems like a TV film. Oh, this TV film seems like a movie. This is the blurred line I'm talking about. And I think that we need to make clear distinctions about what exists where. So I think it's wonderful that TV is doing such a great job, Max, and they're able to compete and nip at Hollywood's heels. But they do need to be separated. They serve different purposes. They meet different audiences. And I think that also it would really limit the number of awards that could be given out, because you only have a certain number of nominees, and you're going to just I think take away a lot of the recognition that's deserved in the television industry. And that's another thing. They're different industries. Actors and writers will cross over, but the hierarchies are different. The advertising is different. The coverage is different. They're different circles. So I don't think they should compete at the awards shows, but they are competing for your dollars, and I think that's the ultimate arena. So I wonder what you guys think. Would you think that these shows should compete? Do you think that television and movies should compete in awards shows? And how do you feel about how they're competing in real life for your money and your time? Which one is winning with you? Write your thoughts down below. Thank you, Max, for your patience and your question. I hope you liked my answer. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow, what questions you might have, and you can watch these other episodes right now.